The longship crashed through waves like a warhammer through shields, salt spray mingling with blood on the deck. Zarek Leifson stood at the bow, his eyes fixed on the burning monastery ahead, its flames painting the night sky red as Ragnarok. The raid had gone well, too well, perhaps. There was little glory in killing monks who fought with prayers instead of swords. "Odin blesses us with easy pickings," shouted Tormund, his beard wet with sea spray and ale. "Gold for the taking, and thralls who won't fight back." Zarek nodded but felt hollow victory in his heart. 3 raids since his father's death, 3 monasteries pillaged, and still the bloodthirst that drove him felt unquenched. The blood debt owed to his family remained unpaid. Somewhere on these English shores lived the men who had betrayed and slaughtered his father during what should have been a peaceful trade. Until their blood soaked the earth, he could find no peace. "Remember," he called to his men as they approached the shore, "we take what we need, but we don't become beasts. The Christians call us monsters enough already." His men grunted agreement. They respected him despite his youth. At 23 winters, Zarek had already proven himself a capable leader and fearsome warrior, though not yet the jarl his father had been. That title now belonged to his uncle, who had stayed behind in their settlement near Kaupang. As their boots hit English soil, Zarek felt the familiar surge of battle fury. Not the mindless rage of berserkers, but the cold, calculated anger that had driven him since finding his father's mutilated body 3 summers past. Every English life he took was a step toward balance, toward the justice the gods demanded. The monastery fell quickly. Soon, the surviving monks were gathered, along with those servants who hadn't fled into the night. Among them stood a girl with eyes that burned even as she kept them downcast. Her hair, the color of wheat at harvest, was bound beneath a simple cloth, but strands had escaped during the chaos, framing a face that carried both fear and defiance. "What have we here?" Tormund grabbed her arm, pulling her forward. "This one might fetch a good price as a thrall." "I am no one's slave," she said in Norse so perfect it stopped Tormund cold. Zarek stepped forward, curious. "You speak our tongue?" "I speak many tongues," she replied, finally raising her eyes to meet his. They were the blue-gray of the winter sea, and just as stormy. "It doesn't make me worth more as property." Something in her gaze made Zarek uncomfortable. Not fear, he'd seen plenty of that tonight, but a certainty, as if she knew something he did not. "What is your name, girl?" he demanded. "Kára Jarlsdottir," she answered, chin raised slightly. Tormund laughed. "Jarlsdottir? A jarl's daughter scrubbing floors in an English monastery? Next you'll claim to be Freya herself." The men around them laughed, but Zarek studied her face. There was something in her features, the proud line of her jaw, the set of her shoulders even in captivity, that spoke of nobility, not servitude. "Bind the captives," Zarek ordered. "We sail with the tide." As they prepared to leave, Zarek found himself watching the girl called Kára. Unlike the other captives, she did not weep or beg. She helped an elderly monk stand when he stumbled, whispered comfort to a frightened boy. Even in chains, she moved with purpose. The blood debt that consumed him momentarily receded, replaced by curiosity. Who was this servant girl who claimed noble birth and spoke their language as if born to it? Perhaps she would fetch a higher price than Tormund thought, or perhaps she held secrets worth more than gold. The return voyage was blessed by fair winds and calm seas, in Jord's favor, the men said. Zarek found himself drawn to the thrall girl who sat among the captives with her back straight as a spear. When he offered her water, she took it with a nod that felt more like a queen accepting tribute than a slave accepting charity. "How does a jarl's daughter end up serving in an English monastery?" he asked her on the second day at sea. Kára's eyes flashed. "How does a jarl's son end up raiding defenseless holy places instead of seeking worthy battles?" Several men nearby growled at her insolence, but Zarek held up a hand to silence them. "You know who I am? Zarek Leifson, son of Leif the Even-Handed, who died by treachery 3 summers past during a trading mission to Northumbria." She sipped the water. "Your reputation precedes you, though it grows increasingly unworthy of your father's memory." Rage flashed through him. In one motion, he drew his seeks, the short blade gleaming in the sunlight. The other captives cowered, but Kára didn't flinch. "You know nothing of my father or his memory," Zarek growled. "I know he believed in fair trade more than raiding. I know he sought alliances where others sought only plunder." Her voice remained steady. "And I know the men who killed him were not those you seek." Zarek lowered the blade, confusion replacing anger. "How would you know this?" "Because I was there," she said simply. "I saw it happen." The revelation hit him like a war hammer. Before he could respond, shouts came from the bow, land had been sighted. Their conversation would have to wait. As they approached the settlement, Zarek found himself torn. The girl either spoke dangerous lies or held truths he had sought for 3 years. Either way, she could not be treated like the other captives. "The thrall girl comes to my hall," he told Tormund as they docked. "I would question her further." Tormund grinned knowingly. "Question her, is it? She's comely enough despite her sharp tongue." "It's not like that," Zarek snapped, then softened his tone. "She claims knowledge of my father's death." Tormund's expression sobered. "Then question her well, but trust nothing. Thralls will say anything to improve their lot." The settlement welcomed the returning warriors with cheers. Zarek's uncle, Jarl Sigurd, met them at the great hall, his massive frame blocking the doorway like a mountain. "A successful raid?" he asked, clasping Zarek's forearm. "Enough silver to please even you, uncle," Zarek replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "And captives who'll bring good prices at market." Sigurd's gaze shifted to Kára, who stood behind Zarek, her hands bound but her head unbowed. "This one looks troublesome." "She claims to know something of my father's death," Zarek said quietly. Sigurd's expression darkened. "Then she should be questioned immediately." He turned to the crowd. "A feast tonight to celebrate the raiders' return. The thralls will be displayed tomorrow at market." As the crowd dispersed, Zarek led Kára to a small storeroom off the main hall. "Speak your piece," he said, cutting her bonds. "And know that if you lie to me, your death will be slower than you can imagine." Kára rubbed her wrists, her gaze unflinching. "Your father came to Northumbria to trade, not raid. He brought furs and amber, seeking English silver and wool. I was there as translator for my father's household." "Your father, the supposed jarl?" Zarek's tone was skeptical. "My father, Jarl Eirik of the Northern Isles," she corrected. "We were guests of Lord Eathold when your father's party arrived. There was to be a great feast, celebrating new trade agreements." Zarek paced the small room. "If you're a jarl's daughter, why were you at an English monastery?" Pain flashed across her face. "Because the same men who killed your father attacked our party as we returned north. My father was slain. I escaped but was captured by Saxons who sold me to the monastery as a servant. They cared nothing for my claims of lineage." "Who?" Zarek demanded, stopping before her. "Who killed my father?" "Men in Lord Eathold's service, but not by his command. They were led by a man called Guthrum One-Eye, a Dane who had taken Saxon gold and converted to their Christ god. He feared the trade agreements would threaten his position." Zarek's mind raced. This aligned with fragments he had heard but dismissed, rumors that his father's killers had been Northmen, not Saxons. You expect me to believe this tale? That my enemy is a converted Dane, not the Saxons I've been raiding. Kára stood, stepping closer. I expect you to honor your father by seeking the truth, not satisfying your bloodlust on innocent monasteries. Their eyes locked, a silent battle of wills. Zarek found no deception in her gaze, only conviction that unsettled him deeply. A knock at the door broke the tension. It was Helga, one of the settlement's elder women. The jarl says the girl is to be prepared for the feast, Helga said. As befits a special captive. The way she said special made Kára stiffen. Zarek felt an unexpected surge of protectiveness. She is to be treated with respect, he said firmly. She may have important information. Helga's eyebrows rose, but she nodded. As she led Kára away, Zarek found himself watching the thrall girl's retreating figure, wondering if he had just heard truth or the most elaborate lie ever crafted to save a captive's life. The great hall blazed with firelight as warriors celebrated their successful raid. Mead flowed freely, and the skald sang of their exploits, embellishing the monastery raid into a battle worthy of saga. Zarek sat at the high table beside his uncle, his thoughts far from the festivities. When Kára entered, the hall briefly quieted. Helga had dressed her in a simple blue gown that had once belonged to Zarek's mother. Her hair, freed from its binding, fell in waves past her shoulders. Without the grime of captivity, her beauty was undeniable, and entirely unwelcome to Zarek, who needed clarity, not distraction. So this is the thrall who claims to know of Leif's death, Sigurd said loudly, gesturing for her to approach. Come, girl, tell us your tale. Kára stood before the high table, her gaze moving between uncle and nephew. I have told Zarek what I know. Tell us all, Sigurd insisted. Let the clan hear this revelation. Something in his uncle's tone made Zarek uneasy. He watched as Kára squared her shoulders and spoke, her voice carrying across the now silent hall. Your brother Leif was murdered by Guthrum One-Eye, a Dane in Saxon service who feared the trade agreements Leif was negotiating. The Saxons you raid had no hand in his death. Murmur spread through the hall. Sigurd's face darkened. And how would a thrall girl know such things, he demanded. I am Kára Jarlsdottir, daughter of Jarl Eirik of the Northern Isles. I was present as my father's translator. Laughter erupted. A jarl's daughter, someone shouted. Next she'll say she's Odin's bride. Silence. Zarek commanded, surprising himself with his vehemence. The hall quieted. Sigurd leaned forward. If you are who you claim, where is your proof? Where are your kinsmen? My father and his warriors were slain in the same attack. I alone escaped, only to be captured by Saxons. Her voice remained steady. But there is one who can verify my identity, Thorvald the far-travelled, who visits your settlement each summer to trade. He knew my father well. Convenient that Thorvald is not due for another month, Sigurd scoffed. Until then, you are nothing but a thrall with an imaginative tale. Uncle, Zarek interjected, what if she speaks truth? This Guthrum is a phantom invented to sow discord, Sigurd cut him off. We know who killed your father. We have raided the guilty for 3 years. Yet I feel no closer to vengeance, Zarek admitted quietly. Sigurd's expression softened. Because your father's spirit cannot rest until his blood price is paid in full. We must continue. He turned to address the hall. Tomorrow the thralls go to market, all of them. His meaning was clear. Kára would be sold, her story dismissed. No. Zarek stood. This one stays until Thorvald arrives. If she lies, she can be sold then. A tense silence fell. Challenging the jarl publicly was dangerous, even for a nephew. After a long moment, Sigurd nodded. Very well. She remains until Thorvald arrives, as your responsibility. She will serve in your household. Relief washed through Zarek, followed by confusion at his own reaction. Why should he care what happened to this girl? Yet something in her story resonated with doubts he had harbored about their raids. If his father's true killers remained unpunished while he took vengeance on the innocent. The feast resumed, but the mood had shifted. As Zarek watched Kára serve mead at his uncle's command, he saw the contempt with which the other women treated her, the disbelief in the warrior's eyes. A supposed jarl's daughter reduced to servitude, it was a tale too fantastical to credit. Yet as the night wore on, he noticed how she carried herself, how she bore their mockery with dignity rather than submission. Either she was the most accomplished liar he had ever encountered, or she was exactly who she claimed to be. And if she spoke truth about her own identity, might she also speak truth about his father's killers? Dawn broke cold and clear as Zarek made his way to the small outbuilding where Kára had been housed for the night. He found her already awake, weaving her hair into a simple braid. You defended me last night, she said without preamble. Why? Because either you're a magnificent liar who deserves to live for the skill alone, or you're telling the truth, which means I've spent 3 years taking vengeance on the wrong people. She finished her braid and stood. And which do you believe? Zarek studied her face in the morning light. I don't know yet. But I intend to find out. How? We sail for the Northern Isles. If you are Jarl Eric's daughter, someone there will know you. Hope flashed across her face, quickly replaced by skepticism. Your Jarl would allow this. What Sigurd doesn't know won't anger him, Zarek replied. We'll take my ship and a small crew. We'll claim to be trading. Why would you risk your Jarl's anger for a thrall's tale? Zarek turned away, unable to meet those penetrating eyes. Because I have dreamed of my father. Not in Valhalla, but walking the shores, restless. If I've been avenging him wrongly. He left the thought unfinished, but Kára nodded in understanding. When do we leave? With tomorrow's tide. Until then, you must play the thrall. The settlement must not suspect. As they walked back toward the main settlement, Kára asked quietly, and if no one recognizes me? If time or hardship has changed me too much? Zarek hadn't considered this. Then I will judge your truth by other means. And if you decide I lie, then you'll wish I had sold you at market. Despite his threat, something had shifted between them. A fragile trust was forming, dangerous for both. Throughout the day, Zarek watched as Kára performed the duties assigned to her. She worked without complaint, though he noticed how the other women gave her the worst tasks, how they whispered and laughed when she passed. The Jarl's daughter, they mocked, too fine for honest work. Yet she completed each task with the same dignity she had shown in captivity. When Brynja, the cook's daughter, deliberately spilled porridge on Kára's skirts, she did not retaliate but simply cleaned it without comment. When young warriors made crude suggestions, she ignored them as if they were beneath her notice. By evening, Zarek had arranged everything. His ship would be ready by morning, stocked with trade goods as pretense. 5 of his most trusted men had agreed to crew it, men who had also harbored doubts about their raids. As darkness fell, he found Kára by the shore, staring northward across the black waters. You should be resting, he said. We sail early. I haven't seen the Northern Isles in 3 years, she replied softly. I had resigned myself to never seeing them again. Zarek stood beside her, watching the moonlight on the waves. Tell me about your home. It is wild and beautiful. Cliffs that seem to hold up the sky. Fields that turn golden in summer. The sea crashes against the rocks like Thor's hammer. Her voice carried such longing that Zarek felt an unfamiliar ache in his chest. And your father? What manner of jarl was he? A sad smile touched her lips. Fair, like yours was said to be. He believed in strength but also wisdom. He taught me to speak many tongues because he said understanding others was the beginning of peace. Peace, Zarek echoed. My father spoke of it often, though I paid little heed. There seemed more glory in battle. And now? He sighed. Now I wonder if there is more honor in justice than blind vengeance. Kára turned to face him, her expression solemn in the moonlight. That wondering is why I trust you to take me home. Their eyes held for a long moment. Zarek felt something stir within him, something more dangerous than attraction, more powerful than curiosity. Understanding, perhaps. Recognition of a kindred spirit. We should return, he said abruptly. Separate paths. We cannot appear friendly. She nodded, but as she turned to go, he caught her arm. If you're lying to me, he said quietly, I will discover it. I know, she replied. That's why I'm not afraid. They slipped away before dawn, the small trading knot cutting silently through the fjord toward open sea. Besides Zarek and Kára, only 5 warriors accompanied them, Hakon, Eirik, Gunnar, Jorunn, and Toki, all men who had known Leif well and harbored their own doubts about Sigurd's vengeful raids. 3 days to the Northern Isles if the wind holds, Hakon said as they reached open water. The oldest of the crew, he had been Leif's friend since boyhood. Zarek nodded, watching as Kára stood at the bow, her face turned into the wind. She wore borrowed men's clothing for the journey, more practical than a gown, and with her hair braided tightly, she could almost pass for a young warrior from a distance. You believe her tale? Hakon asked quietly. I believe it deserves investigation, Zarek replied. My father valued truth above all. He did. Hakon's weathered face creased in a frown. Sigurd will be furious when he discovers your absence. Let him rage. If we find proof of Guthrum One-Eye's treachery, even he cannot deny it. The journey passed swiftly, blessed by Njord with fair winds and calm seas. During the days, Kára kept to herself, helping with shipboard tasks but speaking little. At night, however, as the others slept, she and Zarek would talk quietly at the stern. She told him of growing up in the Northern Isles, of learning languages from traders, of her father's dream of building alliances rather than conquering. In turn, he spoke of his own father's similar vision of the trade networks Leif had built, of the peace he had maintained with neighboring jarls. They were alike, our fathers, Kára said on the second night. Perhaps that's why they sought alliance. And perhaps that's why they died, Zarek replied bitterly. Men of peace in a world of war. Is that what you believe? That peace is impossible. Zarek gazed at the stars. I believed vengeance was the only path to honor. Now. He shook his head. Now I'm not certain of anything. Uncertainty can be a beginning, she said softly. The start of wisdom, my father would say. Later, as Kára slept wrapped in furs near the bow, Hakon joined Zarek at the stern. You grow fond of her, the older man observed. I grow curious, Zarek corrected. Nothing more. Hakon's knowing smile irritated him. I've known you since you were a squalling babe, Zarek Leifson. You look at that girl the way your father looked at your mother. She may be lying to us all, Zarek reminded him. She may be leading us into a trap. She may be, Hakon agreed. Or she may be exactly who she claims. And if she is? If she is, then everything changes, Zarek finished. The blood debt. The raids. All of it. Including your heart, Hakon added quietly before moving away to check the sail. Zarek remained at the stern, watching the ship's wake in the moonlight. His heart had been set on vengeance for so long that he scarcely remembered what else it might feel. Yet when Kára spoke of her father, when her eyes lit with passion for the home she had lost, something within him responded. Something long dormant. Dawn of the third day brought the northern isles into view, jagged silhouettes against the brightening sky. Kára stood at the bow, her whole body tense with anticipation. As they approached the main settlement, Zarek joined her. "What if no one remembers?" she whispered. "What if all my father's people are gone?" "Then we'll find other proof," he assured her, surprising himself with his certainty. The settlement was smaller than Zarek's home but well-built, with a sturdy dock and several longhouses visible beyond. As their ship approached, people gathered at the shore, curious but wary. "Let me speak first," Zarek said as they prepared to disembark. "We come as traders, nothing more." Kára nodded, pulling her cloak hood lower over her face. They stepped onto the dock, Zarek in the lead with his men behind him and Kára in their midst, partially concealed. An older man with a grey-streaked beard stepped forward. "Welcome, strangers. I am Halfdan, steward of Stonehaven. What brings you to our shores?" "I am Zarek Leifson," he replied. "We come to trade and seek information." "Leifson?" Halfdan's eyes narrowed. "Son of Leif the Even-Handed. You knew my father. He was a friend to Jarl Erik, may his soul feast in Valhalla." Halfdan made a gesture to ward off evil. "Both good men, both taken by treachery." Kára pushed forward, throwing back her hood. "Halfdan? Do you remember me?" The steward stared, his weathered face draining of color. "By all the gods," he whispered. "It cannot be." "It is me, Halfdan. Kára. I survived the ambush." The old man reached out a trembling hand to touch her face. "Little Kára? Our jarl's daughter." His eyes filled with tears. "We thought you dead these 3 years past." A murmur swept through the gathering crowd. An older woman pushed forward, her hands covering her mouth in shock. "Kára? Child, is it truly you?" "Sigrid." Kára embraced the woman, both of them now weeping openly. "I tried to return, but I was captured, sold as a thrall to a Saxon monastery." The crowd pressed closer, more faces registering recognition and amazement. Zarek stood back, watching as the truth he had sailed 3 days to verify unfolded before him. She had not lied. Kára Jarlsdottir was indeed who she claimed to be. Which meant everything else she had told him might also be true. Halfdan turned to Zarek, his expression solemn. "You have returned our jarl's daughter to us. Name your reward, and if it is in my power, it shall be yours." "I seek only truth," Zarek replied. "About the attack that killed both our fathers." Halfdan nodded gravely. "Then come to the Great Hall. There is much to tell, and much has changed since Jarl Erik's death." As they walked toward the settlement's central building, Kára fell into step beside Zarek. "You believe me now," she said quietly. "Yes," he admitted. "Though I still don't understand why my uncle would hide the truth." Her expression darkened. "Perhaps that is what we shall discover here." The great hall was smaller than the one in Zarek's settlement but well-built, with intricately carved pillars and a central hearth that cast warm light across benches and tables. Once they were seated with mead and food before them, Halfdan began to speak. After Jarl Erik's death, his brother Harek should have taken leadership, the steward explained. But Harek was away, raiding in the east. By the time news reached him, another had claimed the jarl's seat. Who? Kára demanded. Guthrum One-Eye, Halfdan replied grimly. The same who arranged the ambush. He arrived with warriors and wealth, claiming to be Eric's chosen successor. With you and your father dead, and Zarek absent, many believed him. But not you, Zarek observed. Halfdan shook his head. I knew Eric too well. He would never choose such a man. But Guthrum had strength and silver, two things that speak loudly. Where is this Guthrum now? Zarek asked, feeling the familiar heat of anger rising. Gone these past 2 summers, Sigrid interjected. He sails between here and Saxon lands, building his power. He returns soon for the harvest gathering. Kára's hands clenched into fists. And my uncle Zarek? He gathers supporters in the outer islands, Halfdan said quietly. There has been talk of challenging Guthrum at the Thing, but none have dared without proof of his treachery. Zarek exchanged a glance with Kára. We may have what you need. Kára witnessed the ambush that killed our fathers. Halfdan leaned forward eagerly. Then the gods have truly blessed us by bringing you home, Lady Kára. With your testimony at the Thing, Zarek could reclaim the jarl's seat, and you your rightful place. There's more, Zarek added. If Guthrum killed my father, then the blood debt my people have been collecting from Saxon monasteries has been misplaced. Halfdan nodded. That has been Guthrum's cleverness. He diverted your people's vengeance toward the Saxons while he grew stronger. And he is not alone in this scheme. What do you mean? Zarek demanded. Halfdan hesitated, glancing at his men. There are rumors that Guthrum had a partner in his treachery. Someone from your own settlement who helped arrange the ambush. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Zarek felt cold dread settling in his stomach. Who? He asked, though he feared he already knew. I cannot say for certain, Halfdan replied carefully. But since taking power, Guthrum has made regular trading voyages to only one southern settlement. Mine, Zarek said flatly. Yes. And he speaks with great familiarity of your jarl. Sigurd. The name felt like ash in Zarek's mouth. My uncle. Kára reached beneath the table and gripped his hand, her fingers warm against his suddenly cold skin. We don't know this for certain, she said softly. But it would explain why he dismissed your story so quickly, Zarek replied. Why he has kept us raiding Saxons rather than seeking the true killers. The pieces assembled in his mind like a terrible mosaic. His uncle's insistence on raiding monasteries rather than seeking specific vengeance. His quick dismissal of any rumor that contradicted their belief in Saxon treachery. His rise to jarl in the wake of Leif's death. If this is true, Zarek said slowly, then my uncle betrayed not only my father but our entire clan. And my father as well, Kára added, her voice tight with anger. They died so 2 men could claim power. Halfdan nodded gravely. That is our belief. But belief is not proof, and without proof, challenging either man would be suicide. Then we must find proof, Zarek declared, standing. And we must find Zarek. That won't be necessary, came a deep voice from the hall's entrance. A tall man with a beard as golden as Kára's hair stood framed in the doorway, flanked by warriors. Zarek has found you. Kára's reunion with her uncle was bittersweet. Though joyful to find family alive, the shadow of her father's murder and Guthrum's treachery hung over them all. Zarek, a sea-hardened warrior with Eric's same steady gaze, embraced his niece with tears in his eyes. When word reached me of the ambush, I thought all was lost, he told her as they sat in a private chamber that evening. To find you alive after 3 years, it is Odin's blessing. Not Odin, Kára said, glancing at Zarek who stood nearby. Him. He could have sold me as a thrall but chose to believe my tale. Zarek studied Zarek thoughtfully. The son of Leif. I knew your father, a man of honor. I am beginning to understand how much honor, Zarek replied grimly. And how great the treachery against him. They had spent hours sharing information, Kára's account of the ambush, Zarek's growing suspicions about his uncle, Zarek's observations of Guthrum's rise to power. A pattern of betrayal had emerged, too deliberate to be coincidence. Guthrum returns within the week for the harvest gathering, Zarek explained. He travels with a small contingent, believing his position secure. It may be our only chance to confront him. And my uncle? Zarek asked. If he is truly Guthrum's conspirator, then he must answer for his crimes as well, Zarek said firmly. But first, we need proof that will convince the thing. Kára's testimony is powerful, but Guthrum will claim she misunderstood what she saw. We need more. There were letters, Kára remembered suddenly. My father showed me correspondence from Leif before the meeting. If those still exist, they might still be in Eric's private chamber, Zarek confirmed. Guthrum claimed the Jarl's hall but maintains his own quarters elsewhere. The old chambers have remained largely untouched, considered unlucky after Eric's death. Then we search there, Zarek decided. Tonight, while we still have the advantage of surprise. As the others discussed logistics, Zarek stepped outside for air, his mind reeling from the day's revelations. The stars overhead seemed cold and distant, offering no guidance. If his uncle had truly betrayed his father for power, what did that make Zarek's years of vengeance? Had he been nothing but a tool in Sigurd's deception? He heard soft footsteps and knew without turning that it was Kára. You're troubled, she said, standing beside him. My entire life these past 3 years has been dedicated to avenging my father, he replied. Every raid, every life taken, all based on a lie told by the man I trusted most. Not a complete lie, she said gently. Your father was murdered. You sought justice, even if misguided. Justice? He laughed bitterly. I've brought nothing but suffering to people who had no part in his death. That's not justice, it's blindness. Then open your eyes now, she said, turning to face him. Help me bring true justice to both our fathers. The moonlight caught in her hair, turning it to silver gold. Zarek found himself reaching out to touch a strand that had escaped her braid. When I first saw you, he said quietly, something told me you would change everything. I should have listened more carefully. Her eyes held his, unflinching. And now? Now I hear it clearly. His hand moved to cup her cheek. And it terrifies me. For a moment, they stood suspended in possibility, the space between them charged with unspoken feeling. Then voices from the hall broke the spell, and they stepped apart as Zarek and Halfdan emerged. It's time, Zarek announced. We go to search the old chambers. The Jarl's hall stood on the settlement's highest point, its carved dragon heads glaring down at the darkened buildings below. 4 of Zarek's most trusted men accompanied them, moving silently through shadows. The hall itself was unguarded, a sign of how secure Guthrum felt in his position. Eric's private chamber is beyond the main hall, Zarek whispered as they entered. A small room where he kept important correspondence and treasures. They moved through the deserted great hall, past cold hearths and empty benches, to a narrow door at the far end. It opened with a protesting creak to reveal a small room thick with dust. A writing table stood against one wall, shelves lined another, and a large chest occupied the center of the floor. There, Kára pointed to the chest. Father kept important documents there. The lock had rusted shut over the years of neglect. One of Harek's men broke it with a dagger's hilt, the sound unnaturally loud in the silent chamber. Inside, they found folded parchments, small bags of silver, and personal items, tokens of a jarl's life abruptly ended. Kára lifted out several sealed letters. "These bear Leif's mark," she said, handing them to Zarek. He broke the seal on the first, unfolding it carefully. Though the ink had faded, his father's familiar hand was unmistakable. The letter detailed proposed trade agreements, mentioning both Eric and Leif's hope for alliance through marriage of our children, should they find favor with each other. "They plan to introduce us," he realized, looking up at Kára. "That's why you were at the meeting." She nodded slowly. "I was to serve as translator, but also to meet you." Father spoke highly of Leif's son. The knowledge that their fathers had intended them to meet, perhaps even marry, felt like fate's cruel joke. What might have been a peaceful introduction had instead become a blood-soaked path to this moment. Deeper in the chest, Zarek found what they truly needed. "Here," he said grimly, holding up another letter. "This mentions concerns about SS ambition and warns Eric to be cautious." "Ests could be Sigurd," Zarek acknowledged, his heart heavy. "And this?" Kára exclaimed, pulling out a small carved box. Inside lay a heavy gold arm ring, the kind jarls gave only to their most trusted allies. Inscribed on its surface were two names, Guthrum and Sigurd. "Proof of their alliance," Zarek said softly. "Given after the deed was done, I'd wager." The evidence was damning. Zarek felt sick with the weight of betrayal. His uncle, his father's own brother, had conspired with Guthrum to murder Leif and Eric, clearing the path for both men to seize power. "We have what we need," Zarek declared. "Now we must." A noise from the main hall silenced him. Footsteps approached, accompanied by voices. One, deep and commanding, sent a chill through Kára. "Guthrum," she whispered. "He's returned early." Zarek motioned them all to silence, drawing his sword. There was no other exit from the small chamber. If Guthrum entered, confrontation was inevitable, and they were outnumbered. The footsteps stopped outside the door. "Someone has been here," a voice growled. "The lock is broken." Zarek met Kára's eyes across the chamber, an unspoken promise passing between them. Whatever came next, they would face it together. For their fathers. For justice. For the truth that had brought them to this moment. The door swung open. Guthrum One Eye lived up to his name, a massive man with a black patch covering his left eye, his remaining eye cold as a winter sea. Behind him stood 6 warriors, weapons drawn. "Well," he said, surveying the room's occupants with dangerous calm. "Zarek Leifson. I wondered when you'd finally show your face again." His gaze shifted, then widened with genuine shock. "And Kára Jarlsdottir, risen from the dead. The gods must truly favor me to deliver both thorns in my side at once." "The gods favor justice, not treachery," Zarek replied, his sword unwavering. "We know what you did, Guthrum. We have proof of your betrayal." Guthrum's laugh was like stones grinding. "Proof? What proof could you possibly have after 3 years?" Zarek stepped forward, holding up the arm ring. "This. Your alliance with my uncle Sigurd, sealed in gold. The conspiracy that killed our fathers." For an instant, uncertainty flickered across Guthrum's face. Then his expression hardened. "Sigurd was wise enough to recognize opportunity," he said. "Your father was a fool who thought trade more valuable than conquest. The arrangement benefited everyone. Sigurd became jarl of your settlement, I took control here, and both our peoples grew stronger through raids rather than wasteful peace. You admit it, then?" Kára demanded, her voice shaking with rage. You admit murdering our fathers for power. I admit eliminating obstacles, Guthrum corrected coldly. As I will now. He signaled his men to attack. Steel rang against steel as the chamber erupted in combat. In the confined space, numbers mattered less than skill, and both Zarek and Zarek were formidable warriors. Kára snatched a dagger from the writing table, joining the fray with surprising ferocity. Zarek found himself facing Guthrum directly, their blades locking above the chest of evidence. Leifson, Guthrum snarled. You should have stayed home, boy. I came for truth, Zarek replied, straining against the larger man's strength. And justice. There is no justice, Guthrum spat. Only power. Your uncle understood that. They broke apart, circling. Around them, the battle raged, Zarek's men fighting valiantly against Guthrum's warriors in the cramped chamber. My father valued honor, Zarek said. Something you know nothing about. He attacked with renewed fury, driving Guthrum back toward the door. The older warrior was strong but slower, and Zarek's rage lent him speed. Their blades clashed again and again, sparks flying in the dim room. From the corner of his eye, Zarek saw Kára struggling with one of Guthrum's men. As he turned to help her, Guthrum seized the opportunity, driving his blade toward Zarek's exposed side. Pain exploded along his ribs. Not a killing blow, but deep enough to weaken him. He stumbled, feeling warm blood soaking his tunic. Zarek! Kára's cry cut through the chaos. Guthrum raised his sword for a killing strike, only to howl in agony as a dagger embedded itself in his shoulder. Kára stood behind him, her face a mask of cold fury. That's for my father, she said, before driving a second blade into his back. And that's for Leif. Guthrum fell to his knees, his remaining eye wide with disbelief. Zarek stepped forward, placing his sword at the usurper's throat. Surrender, he commanded. Face the thing's judgment. Blood bubbling at his lips, Guthrum laughed. Sigurd will avenge me. Our alliance runs deeper than you know. Then he too will face justice, Zarek declared, before delivering the killing stroke. As Guthrum's body crumpled, the fight went out of his remaining men. 2 were already dead, the others quickly subdued. Zarek's warriors suffered wounds but none fatal. Kára rushed to Zarek, who had slumped against the wall, hand pressed to his bleeding side. How bad? She asked, already tearing fabric from her undertunic to bind the wound. I'll live, he grimaced. Thanks to you. A jarl's daughter learns more than languages, she said, working quickly to stem the bleeding. Including where to place a blade. Zarek joined them, wiping blood from his sword. Guthrum is finished, but this is just beginning. His death will cause chaos until we can present our evidence at the thing. And there's still Sigurd, Zarek reminded them, wincing as Kára tightened the bandage. My uncle will know something's wrong when I don't return. Then we must move quickly, Zarek decided. Halfdan will secure the settlement while I gather the council. Kára, take Zarek somewhere safe to recover. By morning, the word must spread, Irik's daughter has returned, Guthrum is dead, and the truth of the old betrayal has come to light. As dawn approached, the settlement buzzed with the news. Guthrum's few remaining supporters fled or surrendered, while those who had secretly remained loyal to Irik's line emerged to pledge support to Zarek and Kára. The evidence, the letters, the gold arm ring, and most importantly, Kára's eyewitness account, spread from household to household. In a small dwelling near the shore, Kára tended Zarek's wound. The cut was deep but clean, and with proper care, would heal without festering. You should rest, she told him, finishing a fresh bandage. There isn't time, he replied, though his face was pale with blood loss. Sigurd will hear of this soon. He'll prepare for war. You're in no condition to fight, she argued. Not today, he conceded. But soon. My people need to know the truth about their jarl. Kára sat beside him on the narrow bed, her hand still stained with his blood. Why did they do it? How could brothers betray each other that way? Zarek sighed, the pain in his heart deeper than his wound. Power consumes some men. My father trusted Sigurd completely, he never saw the betrayal coming. Like our meeting, Kára said softly. They planned for us to forge an alliance through marriage, never suspecting we would instead meet as captor and captive. The Norns weave strange fates, Zarek agreed, taking her hand. Yet here we are, fulfilling our father's wishes in a way they never imagined. She looked at their joined hands. Is that what we're doing? Fulfilling their wishes? No, he said, meeting her eyes. I think we're finding our own path now. The path they would have wanted for us, one of truth and honor. And perhaps more, she asked quietly. Instead of answering with words, Zarek drew her closer, his lips finding hers in a kiss that spoke of possibilities neither had dared imagine 3 days ago. The servant girl and the raider, the jarl's daughter and the vengeful son, both masks fallen away to reveal something truer beneath. When they finally broke apart, Kára rested her forehead against his. When this is over, she whispered, when justice is done. When this is over, he promised, we'll honor our fathers by building what they dreamed of. Alliance. Peace. A future. She smiled, the first true smile he had seen from her. I would like that very much. Word traveled faster than ships. By the time Zarek convened the thing 3 days later, settlements from across the region had sent representatives to hear the extraordinary tale of betrayal and return. Zarek, still weak but determined to stand, joined Kára and Zarek before the assembled crowd. The evidence was presented, the letters, the gold arm ring, and most damning of all, the confessions of 2 of Guthrum's men who had been present at the original ambush. They confirmed what Kára had witnessed. Guthrum and Sigurd had planned the attack together, ensuring both would rise to power in their respective settlements. Jarl Eirik and Jarl Leif sought alliance through trade and eventually marriage, Zarek explained to the gathered assembly. Their death served only 2 men's ambition. Now justice must be served. The thing's judgment was unanimous, Zarek would be recognized as rightful Jarl of the Northern Isles. As for Sigurd, he would be declared nothing, without honor, and subject to lawful vengeance. What will you do? Kára asked Zarek as they stood watching the sunset after the thing's conclusion. His wound was healing, his strength returning with each day. I must return home, he said heavily. My people deserve to know the truth. And Sigurd? He couldn't finish the sentence. He is your blood, she acknowledged. That makes this harder. Blood he betrayed when he arranged my father's death. Zarek's expression hardened. But you're right, I take no joy in what must be done. Kára took his hand. You won't face him alone. I'm coming with you. He started to protest, but she silenced him with a look that brooked no argument. My father died alongside yours. This is my fight too. Her grip tightened. Besides, I have some skill with a blade, as Guthrum discovered. Despite everything, Zarek smiled. I've noticed. The voyage south was tense but swift, favorable wind speeding their 3 ships, Zarek's original vessel plus 2 provided by Zarek. Warriors from both settlements filled their decks, united in purpose. Kára remained by Zarek's side, her presence a constant reminder of why this confrontation was necessary. They approached Zarek's settlement under cover of night. Hakon, who had remained loyal to Zarek throughout, led them to a hidden cove where they could land undetected. Sigurd has been in a rage since your disappearance, Hakon reported. He's called up warriors, claiming you've been captured or killed by enemies. How many remain loyal to him? Zarek asked. Fewer than he believes, Hakon replied. Many have questioned our raids these past years. The doubt you planted has grown. By morning, their force was assembled, Harek's warriors combined with those from Zarek's settlement who had secretly gathered, drawn by word of his return. They numbered nearly 100, a formidable challenge to Sigurd's power. As the sun reached its zenith, they marched into the settlement. Villagers stared in shock at the sight of Zarek at the head of a war party, Kára beside him in the armor of a shield maiden, her golden hair visible beneath a simple helmet. They found Sigurd in the great hall, surrounded by his remaining loyal warriors. When Zarek entered, his uncle's face showed a fleeting relief quickly replaced by wariness. "Nephew," Sigurd said carefully. "We thought you lost." "Not lost, uncle," Zarek replied coldly. "Found. I know the truth about my father's death." Sigurd's eyes darted to Kára, narrowing with recognition and calculation. "The thrall girl. I see she's bewitched you with her tales." "She is Kára Jarlsdottir of the Northern Isles," Zarek declared for all to hear. "Daughter of Jarl Eirik, who died alongside my father in an ambush you helped arrange." Murmurs spread through the hall. Sigurd's men exchanged uncertain glances. "Lies," Sigurd spat. "All lies from a thrall seeking to improve her position." "We have proof," Zarek countered. "Letters. Witnesses. And this." He held up the gold arm ring bearing both Guthrum and Sigurd's names. "Your gift from your co-conspirator." Color drained from Sigurd's face. "Where did you get that?" "From Guthrum's private chamber," Kára answered. "Before Harek killed him for his treachery." The shock of Guthrum's death visibly staggered Sigurd. His gaze swept the hall, noting the grim faces surrounding him, the dwindling number of men still at his side. "You were my father's brother," Zarek said, the pain of betrayal raw in his voice. "How could you arrange his death?" "Your own blood." For a moment, it seemed Sigurd might deny it again. Then his expression hardened. Leif was weak, he snarled. All his talk of trade and peace. "Vikings are warriors. We take what we want through strength, not negotiation." He would have turned us into merchants. "He wanted prosperity for our people," Zarek countered. "He wanted alliance with Eirik through you," Sigurd gestured contemptuously toward Kára. "Marrying you to that one, diluting our bloodline with islander stock." Kára stepped forward, her voice cutting like a blade. "My father sought peace through strength, not endless raiding. As did Leif. They were visionaries, while you and Guthrum were merely greedy for power." Sigurd laughed bitterly. "Power is all that matters in this world, girl. Something your father never understood." His hand moved to his sword. "And something my nephew has yet to learn." "I've learned enough," Zarek replied. "The thing has declared you nothing, without honor. Your life is forfeit for the blood debt you owe." "Then come take it," Sigurd challenged, drawing his sword. "If you have the courage your father lacked." The hall cleared as warriors from both sides formed a circle. This would be settled in the old way, combat between leaders. Hakon tried to intervene, citing Zarek's recent wound, but Zarek waved him off. "This is between us," he said, drawing his sword and facing his uncle. Sigurd was older but still powerful, a veteran of countless battles. Zarek was younger, faster, but weakened by his injury and the emotional weight of confronting his father's murderer. They circled each other like wolves, searching for weakness. Sigurd struck first, a powerful overhead blow that Zarek barely parried. The force of it sent pain shooting through his wounded side. "You're weak, like your father," Sigurd taunted, pressing his attack. Too much mercy, too little killer instinct. Zarek defended, giving ground, conserving his strength. His uncle's style was familiar. They had trained together since Zarek was old enough to hold a sword. But that familiarity worked both ways. When Sigurd committed to a powerful swing, Zarek sidestepped rather than parrying, letting the blade whistle past. Off balance, Sigurd couldn't react quickly enough to Zarek's counterstrike, which opened a gash along his arm. First blood drawn, they separated, reassessing. Zarek felt his wound threatening to reopen, warm wetness spreading beneath his armor. "Yield," he offered. "Confess your crimes and accept exile." Sigurd spat. "Never. One of us dies today." They clashed again, blades ringing in the tense silence of the hall. This time, Sigurd fought with desperate fury, driving Zarek back with a flurry of blows. One caught Zarek's shoulder, another slipped past his guard to slice his thigh. Staggering, Zarek fell to one knee. Sigurd raised his sword for the killing stroke. "Your father died begging for mercy," he sneered. "Will you do the same?" Something snapped inside Zarek, not rage, but clarity. "My father died with honor," he said. "Something you'll never understand." With his remaining strength, he surged upward, driving his blade through Sigurd's guard and into his chest. The Jarl's eyes widened in shock, his sword clattering uselessly to the floor. "For my father," Zarek said quietly. "And for the truth." Sigurd slumped forward, blood bubbling from his lips. "You're still weak," he gasped. "Peace will destroy us all." "No," Zarek replied as his uncle's life ebbed away. "It will save us." When it was over, when Sigurd's body had been removed and the hall cleared, Zarek found himself alone with Kára. His wounds had been tended, fresh bandages applied, but the greater wound, the betrayal he had survived, would take longer to heal. "What happens now?" Kára asked softly, sitting beside him at the high table. "The settlement needs a new jarl," he said. "The warriors have already pledged to me, but I'm not sure I want the title." "Why not?" Zarek looked at her, seeing not the captive thrall he had found in an English monastery, but the woman who had changed everything. "Because I'm thinking there might be a better way. The alliance our fathers envisioned, it still makes sense. Between our settlements," she asked, though her eye suggested she understood his deeper meaning. "Between us," he said, taking her hand. "Not just for politics or power, but because I've found something I wasn't looking for." Her smile was like sunrise after the longest night. "And what is that?" "A path forward that honors our fathers while building something new. Trade instead of raids. Alliance instead of feuds." He paused, gathering courage for words more difficult than any battle cry. "Love instead of hatred." "Love," she repeated softly. "Is that what this is?" "I think it must be," he replied. "Nothing else would be strong enough to overcome everything that stood between us." Kára leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his. "Then perhaps we are fulfilling our father's wishes after all, though by a path they never could have foreseen." "The Norns weave as they will," Zarek agreed. "But we choose how to walk the tapestry." The wedding took place at midsummer, when the days were longest and the world seemed full of light. Representatives from both settlements gathered on neutral ground, a green island halfway between their lands that would become the center of their new alliance. Zarek, now secure as Jarl of the Northern Isles, stood as witness for Kára. Hakon, whom Zarek had named as his regent while he established the new trading center, represented his settlement. The ceremony combined traditions from both their homes, handfasting with cords woven from both lands, exchange of sword and keys, and oaths sworn not just to each other but to the alliance their union symbolized. Kára wore a gown of deep blue adorned with amber and silver, her golden hair crowned with spring flowers. Zarek, fully healed from his wounds, stood tall in his finest tunic, his father's sword at his side. When they exchanged rings and spoke their vows, those gathered saw not just two people joining, but a new future taking shape. The servant girl and the Viking prince, Hakon murmured to Zarek as they watched the couple complete the ceremonial circuit of the gathering. Who would have imagined it? Their fathers did, Zarek replied with a sad smile. Though not quite this way. At the feast that followed, skalds from both settlements composed verses commemorating the unusual journey that had brought the couple together, from captivity to leadership, from vengeance to justice, from enemy to beloved. The tale would grow in telling over the years, becoming legend, how a thrall girl whom everyone mocked proved to be a jarl's daughter, how her courage revealed a terrible betrayal, and how love ultimately triumphed over hatred. That night, as they stood together looking out over the water from their new hall on the island, Zarek drew Kára close. "Are you happy?" he asked. "Happier than I thought possible after all that's happened," she replied, leaning into him. "Though I still miss my father." "And yours?" "They're watching from Valhalla," Zarek said. "Probably sharing mead and laughing at how complicated we made their simple plan." Kára laughed. A simple trade agreement becomes a 3-year saga of captivity, revelation, and battle. "Worth it, though," he said, kissing her temple. "To find you. Even when you thought I was just a troublesome thrall with an unbelievable story. Even then," he admitted. "Perhaps especially then. You challenged everything I thought I knew, about enemies, about honor, about myself." She turned in his arms, raising a hand to trace the scar that now marked his cheek from the final battle with Sigurd. "And you gave me back my name when I had almost forgotten it myself." Around them, the settlement they were building together was taking shape, homes and storehouses, a trading dock where ships from both their peoples could meet in peace. Already word was spreading of the new alliance, drawing interest from other settlements eager to trade rather than raid. "What shall we call this place?" Kára asked, gesturing to their growing settlement. Zarek considered for a moment. "Fröhöfen," he suggested. "Peace Harbor." "I like it," she said, smiling. "A fitting name for what our fathers dreamed of." "And what we've built from their dream," he added, drawing her closer as stars appeared above them. The servant girl whom everyone had mocked and the Viking prince who discovered her truth stood together, looking out over the waters that had once divided their peoples. Behind them, the feast continued, voices raised in song, laughter warming the night air, two peoples becoming one through celebration and shared purpose. And if the ghosts of two jarls watched from Valhalla's golden hall, they surely raised their drinking horns in approval of what their children had accomplished, not just justice for the past, but hope for the future, built on the strongest foundation of all, a love that had overcome every obstacle the gods had placed in its path.